Welcome back to Faith and Freedom 250, a series from the Herzog Foundation. As we count down to America's 250th birthday, we're revisiting the faith and principles that built this nation. In this episode, we turn to one of the most important figures in our history, George Washington.
No history of the United States is complete without discussion about one man, George Washington. Few figures in our nation's story rise to his level. As a soldier, statesman, and president, he distinguished himself time and time again through decades of service, helping to found and lead a fledgling nation. Washington is remembered for many things. His bold and daring maneuvers during the War for Independence were balanced by his caution and wisdom as president. These two approaches may seem contradictory to us today, but perhaps not to Washington and those who knew him best.
George Washington held a lifelong conviction that guided his actions from his first military engagement until his last official message to the nation. He believed that the hand of divine providence was at work in his life and in the lives of his countrymen. This conviction is most clearly seen in his farewell address, published September 19, 1796, just weeks before that year's election for the nation's top office, the first in which President Washington himself was not a candidate. He used the occasion to impart several important messages for the nation's future leaders. Washington's farewell address has become one of the most read presidential writings and is often a required reading for any student of American history. Since 1862, the full text has been read aloud every year in the United States Senate.
According to most modern summaries, Washington made two key points: avoid foreign entanglements with European powers, and beware of the development of political parties in the United States. With those warnings, he identified the root causes of many crises his successors would face, from John Adams to Donald Trump. But there's another message Washington conveyed in his final address to his country, one that is often overlooked: a message about faith. Washington stated, "The propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of right and order which heaven itself has ordained. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion, and morality are indispensable supports."
Later in the same message, Washington pressed further, asking, quote, "Where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths? Which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice? And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle." End quote. Washington's message was clear. For our nation to survive, religion and morality are required. He called them indispensable supports, without which America could not stand.
Washington's focus on religion and morality wasn't just political rhetoric. It was the culmination of a lifetime of personal belief. Time and time again throughout his private and public life, George Washington demonstrated his reliance on a higher power. Washington's religious views were shaped at an early age. As a young man, he copied the 110 Rules for Civility in his own hand, instilling him a code of conduct for a Virginia gentleman. These lessons rooted in moral precepts that reflected Christian values. During the Revolution, as commander-in-chief, he understood that victory on the battlefield required more than just artillery and tactics. It required a higher moral purpose to rally the troops on the field and the citizens at home to the cause. Washington structured his forces to include a chaplain for each regiment to tend to the spiritual and moral necessities of his men. He called for public days of prayer and thanksgiving during the war, not only for his soldiers, but for all Americans. Washington insisted that the colonists' freedom required a special blessing from God, and that blessings could only be delivered to morally upright and righteous people.
As president, tradition holds that Washington added the phrase, "So help me God," to the end of the oath of office in an impromptu but powerful message that his own success relied on a higher power. Moments later in his inaugural address, He explained that no people had more reason than Americans to thank the invisible hand of God for their national blessings. That same year, his Thanksgiving proclamation urged countrymen to give thanks to Almighty God and seek forgiveness for national sins.
These weren't isolated gestures. They were the actions of a pious man who believed he and his fellow countrymen owed God, or Providence, a higher power for their special place on earth as free men and women. Washington's farewell address was the final act of his public life, leaving the nation some of the most carefully considered advice ever written. He lived with the firm knowledge that his successes and good fortune were not his doing alone. His long tenure in public service gave him the perspective to urge Americans to maintain a religious and moral society. From his vantage point as a world leader, even as new as his world was, he saw clearly what happens when a society abandons religious faith for a purely secular system. Time and again, he was shown that morality and religion must go hand in hand if liberty is to endure.
George Washington's words still resonate. His belief that America needed faith and morality at its core wasn't just for his generation, it was for ours, right now, here today.
Washington lived with the knowledge that his success was not his own, but blessings from God. His final words to the nation remind us that freedom cannot survive without faith. This is Faith and Freedom 250. Join us next time as we continue to uncover the faith that built America.